Hi, I'm Kim Meinert, and I'm here with Marc Trost, Smart Money Moves with Marc. And Marc is the founder of Marc Trost Financial out of Virginia. And tell me a little bit about Virginia and how you ended up living there.
I'm born and raised in Virginia, so I grew up right down in Springfield and went to school there, and have never left.
Wow, there's no place like home.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, one of the things I want to talk to you about today is something that people, well, they like to complain about it. I'm going to say they don't like to talk about it. They don't like to think about it. And that is the T word, the taxes. Okay. And there are taxes in retirement that we have to pay and we have to prepare for. And what you don't know about taxes will cost you.
It can, and it can cost you an awful lot. If you don't prepare properly for taxes, in retirement, it can be your worst nightmare. You have RMDs and IRMAA and other things, and RMDs tend to confuse people sometimes.
So that's a required minimum distribution, an RMD. And I know we have a lot of acronyms in our world, and some of us aren't quite sure what they stand for. So the required minimum distribution, what is that and how does it work?
So many people have 401ks, 403bs, and tax qualified plans where they put the money aside, didn't pay the taxes on that, and then with a promise to pay later on in life.
And assuming that you're going to be in a lower tax bracket.
Hoping.
Which may not be the case.
It's oftentimes not. It actually, because that money has grown so significantly over the last 10 to 15 years with the market constantly going up, it's created actually a lot of millionaires now. And because of that, when you hit 72, you have an amount that you have to start taking out. You must take out the required minimum distribution from that amount. And each year, that amount will go up based on your age, and that percentage will increase year over year. And if that money just continues to grow, it's going to put you into a higher tax bracket. So what do you do?
What do you do?
Fortunately, there are some options and remedies, but it does take some time. And based on the tax qualification of it, Uncle Sam wants those taxes because you didn't pay the taxes on it. But right now is a good time for people to take advantage of the low tax rate environment, with the current administration. And we actually foresee that that's going to be extended instead of sunsetted at the end of 2025.
Okay, so a little bit of planning goes a long way. And
Yep.
I know the crystal ball eludes us, but you do have some idea of how things will go and directing your clients how they can best prepare for that.
Right. And that's done through proper planning and understanding and finding out what they have and where. And that oftentimes comes up in the discovery process. So moving forward with that, we will begin to understand what are your goals and are you comfortable paying this amount in taxes?
You touched on it a little bit, but when people are working, they're paying their taxes. And then sometimes in retirement, they end up paying more. And I think you just touched on that, but can you go a little deeper in that?
So oftentimes, well, at this point, people have made so much money in those retirement accounts that they are going to be required to take out more money than they may have been making during their
working years. So question, who decides how much they have to take out?
The IRS.
Oh, okay.
Yep. The IRS you get a little form and you can sit down and figure it out. And if you have a, $1 million or $2 million investment account, that is, qualified money, it can be tens of thousands of dollars that you're required to take out. And at that point, what do you do with it? And you are going to have to take it out, because if you don't, the penalties and fees are excessive and make you regret not having done that.
So you help your clients stay on track with knowing when they need to make those minimum required distributions.
Yep. So we work with our clients to understand when do they need to take the money out, how much do they need to take it out, where are we going to take it out, do we want to convert some of it? And that oftentimes can be beneficial for a client as well if they're young enough or they have enough time before they start needing to take out those RMDs. It's a little bit more difficult when we hit that age of 72, but we can still do it and help them. But it makes it a little bit more difficult at that point.
So your goal is to have people come and see you earlier rather than later. What do you think is a good time for someone to sit down with a financial planner and make those decisions, create that blueprint?
Well, always the earlier the better, especially since we don't charge any fees, so they don't have to worry about, what's it going to cost me to go in and sit down, and do I make enough money, which we don't have any minimums that we have to worry about. So obviously, the sooner that somebody can come in and sit down with us, the better. The younger, the better. But we like to have at least 10-year time frame. We can work with 5. I've had people said, hey, I'm retiring in 3 years. I even had a gentleman one time who came into my office in January of 2020. And he said, hey, I want to talk to you about my retirement. I said, great. When are you retiring? Oh, I'm retired as of December 31st, 2018.
Oh.
So he had been retired for the full year of 2019. And unfortunately, the gentleman made a lot of mistakes before we could even begin to help him. So he came into the office and he had about $1.8 million in his thrift savings plan. And during his retirement, he said, well, I'm going to pay off my house. Okay. So he just decided at the beginning of 2019, he's going to rip out $450,000 and pay off his house. And he paid the taxes on it, or so he thought at the time. They withheld the X amount of dollars and paid it off. And he went on about his way, and no big deal. Came into my office, and we sat down, and we're going through all of this. And we're beginning to see where he is. And we said, okay, you need to readjust this TSP. We need to move some of this. And we came back to him with some recommendations, and he did not like those recommendations. He wanted to stay fully invested in the market. He believed that he was going to make more money in the market and, be damned with what happened. And then what happened in February and March of 2020? Well, the market dropped out because of COVID, and he lost 50% in there. And then he did his taxes. And he came into our office, and he was very upset, and he wanted us to fix his situation. What ended up happening is he had $1.8 million, took out over $400,000, brought him down to about 1.3-ish, some 1.35. And then he lost 50% of that 1.3. So now he's under $700,000 about 15 months into his retirement, when he was expecting that $1.8 million to last him a lifetime.
Ouch.
And that $450,000 was regular, ordinary income, so it was taxable. He had his wife's salary, his pension, and his Social Security. So he ended up with a tax bill of about $600,000. So it was kind of a bit of a sticker shock for him when he ended up having to pay an awful lot of money in taxes.
Wow. Did he have to go back to work then?
He, to the best of my knowledge, did not, but he could not get it out of his head to follow the advice there, unfortunately, and we felt bad for him. But unfortunately, that was an instance where we brought to the table the advice and said, this is what we believe you need to do, and we should do this sooner rather than later. And it actually ended up hurting him. He did make adjustments to life. And I believe his wife was working longer than she anticipated.
Yeah, that's where hopefully learning from other people's mistakes can help us. And by telling those stories and people hearing what you have to say will encourage them to come out and make better choices.
We always hope.
We always hope, right? Now, one of the ways that you find new clients is by doing seminars.
Correct.
And in those seminars, you educate people on things like tax planning, wills and estates. And can you tell us a story about someone who, I think you mentioned it a little bit earlier, who came in and he actually had quite a bit of money?
We did have a client who came in not too long ago, and this was a client who had saved through, you know, his own resources, about $4 million. And he had done a pretty good job of saving it, but the problem was that the vast majority of that was in what's called qualified money or tax deferred money. And he had created a very large problem for himself heading into retirement as he approached age 72. So he had a Schwab account and he had been paying a fee on this for 30, 40 years and never dealt with anybody there. Never got any help, just did everything on his own. And he did a pretty good job on his own, not going to lie. But because he didn't work with anybody, he created a very large tax problem for himself and his wife. And it created such an issue that he was trying to figure out how we can get around doing this without having to pay IRMAA.
And IRMAA, you talked to me about that a little bit earlier, income-related monthly adjustment amount. So
Yes.
income-related monthly adjustment. Now, that's kind of scary. If they can adjust it monthly, that means it could go up.
It means that you could end up paying more on your Medicare and your Social Security becomes taxable as well. So it does create a much larger tax situation for yourself moving forward. Yes.
And this gentleman did not want to pay that. And what did you do? What strategy did you help him look at that maybe he could avoid that?
Well, we had employed through the discovery. We went through several discovery meetings with him and trying to narrow down on what it is that he needed to do. And through that process, what we came up with was a solution that it would save him about $50,000 a year in taxes by paying the IRMAA, paying the additional amount, but it would save him significantly more money, and it would allow him to leave behind for his kids an additional $1 million for each child, and he had 3 children.
So now while we're talking about taxes, can you talk a little bit about any tax-free strategies? Now, I know we have tax deferred, but what can you do to actually avoid paying those taxes?
Well, there are a number of things. So if you already have money set aside in that tax deferred account, you can do what's called a Roth conversion. And those have become very popular lately. And there's a lot of different solutions that we can employ for that. And we try to take advantage of those over 5 or 10 years, depending upon you. At that point, you have to pay the taxes. It doesn't matter. There's no way of getting around that. But what we can do is help you figure out an efficient manner so that it doesn't impact your way of living, but also convert that money over to post-tax money and allow it to grow, especially since the market at this point will probably continue on its upward trajectory. It would be more advantageous for clients. If we have a younger clientele, we have other strategies we can employ that simply it's just not taxed. It goes in. We can build out different types of accounts where, like my son, we built out a life insurance policy, believe it or not, to take advantage of the tax code 7702. And he is going to pay into that a small amount each month until he's about 65. And then he'll have paid in roughly about $300,000 over that lifetime which would be about 30, 40 years at this point. And then when he starts taking money out in retirement, it's going to be in excess of $200,000 annually he'll be able to pull out every year. And that will be tax-free money.
Wow, that's a good feeling right there.
He's quite happy.
Yeah.
He actually brags a little bit about to his friends at this point.
Okay. And have any of them come to you and said, hey, can you give me that advice?
We're working with a couple of his buddies, yes.
That's great. That's great. Influencing that next generation to make better decisions. And even though we're going to look at inflation That $200,000 a month, you said?
A year.
A year.
That's
Year.
it.
Oh, sorry. That'd be great.
He wishes it was a month. Trust me, I wish it was a month.
Yeah, no, $200,000 a year could still hopefully, subsidize his Social Security. Should we still have Social Security back then?
My son is going to do very well in his retirement, especially with his military disability and pension and everything that he's working on. And then you build that back in and his Social Security, he's going to be just fine.
That's great. So your son was in the Marines,
Correct.
and then you mentioned disability from the Marines. Did he unfortunately have some kind of accident, or what happened?
He is an accident.
He is an accident.
He's a walking accident some days, it seems. But no, so with the military, you have bumps and bruises and scrapes, and they track all of that. And coming out of the military, it's very, very hard on the body. So you do receive compensation for that, and they pay it out in percentages. So, and in the state of Virginia, for a veteran that hits 100% disability, their children actually get a lot of benefits, like free college tuition.
Oh, that's helpful.
So there's a lot of benefits that where the country and the state both say thank you to not just you, but your family.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, it sounds like you did a great job raising this boy, and hopefully he will pay less taxes than you've had to pay.
I'll be paying taxes on him for a while. Don't worry.
All right. Well, so in closing here, what is the one tax mistake that could cost your retirees the most money?
Oh, there's so many to choose from, to be honest with you.
We make a lot of mistakes around taxes, don't we?
We all do. And I've learned as well. One of the things that people simply make the mistake is just failing to plan. And if you don't have that plan, if you don't put that in order up front or understand what you have, then it can be very detrimental. As we discussed earlier, the gentleman did a great job of earning. He saved, did a fantastic job, but he put himself in a position where it was going to be detrimental to him because of what he did. He did not plan correctly or properly, and he ended up having to make a hard choice there between this or that. And
now, do you have a CPA in your firm? Do you recommend a CPA for your clients, and will that help them in their tax planning strategy?
We do have tax planning strategists on staff, and that's Bryce. And we also do have an accountant that I do bring in when necessary or needed. Yes.
Yeah, because those details sometimes easy for us to miss when we're just going through our daily lives and buying our groceries and paying our bills and putting our checks in the bank, and we just don't see the big picture sometimes.
That's correct. Sometimes we just don't see beyond our nose. We're just so focused on our daily lives that we forget to think about, oh goodness, how do I make this work long term? What am I going to do? And that's where we begin to come into focus and specialize with our clients, helping them see, the what ifs. What if this happens? What if you do this? And that's where we begin to work with our clients and help them focus in on that.
Right. So smart money moves, no matter what comes your way, we have a plan, and then we have another plan, and a plan B, and a plan C.
It's never a static plan. It's always very dynamic. It's always very moving.
And very changing. And I know you recommend that people update their plans periodically. So when they go through a life change, maybe their partner has passed and now they have to make some kind of adjustment. And those big life moments, is that a good time for people to come see you?
It is. And we do have a number of clients right now that are experiencing some very big life experiences.
Yeah, challenges.
Challenges, that's a great word for it.
Yeah, and just making the best of it is what your firm helps people to do.
Correct.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for talking today about taxes.
My pleasure.